one of my favorite genres in gaming actually is rail shooters. I grew up playing Star Fox at my friend's house and really enjoyed the game because I found it really innovative and it was one of the early examples of 3D. And whenever the Saturn was shown in different magazines and I saw screenshots of Panzer Dragoon, I was pretty intrigued. And you've never played Panzer Dragoon.
No, I didn't have a Saturn growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a Super Nintendo either. So rail shooters were not something that I was really exposed to until quite later in my gaming history.
Yeah, so here on the Gamer's Gaiden, that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm JC.
I'm Ian.
And yeah, so let's talk about Panzer Dragoon. This game originally came out in the launch of the Saturn, effectively, and the game apparently was in development conceptually since the early 90s. And its roots are basically, I guess in my thoughts, is like Zaxxon 3D, which is an old Master System game, Space Harrier, Star Fox, or like is it Blade or Barrier? It was released on the Sega CD, and it was also an arcade game. And this is kind of like the evolution in the 16-bit era of these types of rail shooter games. And it was kind of wild to see, in my opinion. I remember like renting this system once because none of us actually got a Saturn. We all decided on PlayStations.
Good choice.
Yeah, I guess in the long run, it kind of gave us a lot of great games regardless to play. But the game's sort of visual style was very unique. It's based off of an artist known as Mobius, and he did some of the concept art. It's actually the cover art of the Japanese one, but we got, you can kind of see it in the background here. We got basically 3D art to show the game. Some of our artwork wasn't as great. It's one of those examples. But yeah, the artist basically did a comic called Azark, and that Arzak. And so the artist was hired to make a couple of concept art pieces for the Dragon Rider and stuff like that. And it's very much similar to the pterodactyl rider from that comic. And he's influenced such things like Geiger, and Mobius did influence on Alien. Also, Mobius did some work apparently on The Abyss and The Fifth Element, Willow the movie, some other different things that some of us will have known.
When you showed it to me, it very much, if anyone's seen Heavy Metal, like the original Heavy Metal
comic and the movie,
a lot of the stuff looked like the pterodactyl rider, I guess, from the finale. Mm-hmm. Very much that.
Yeah, and you can, if you know and seen the artist, I've shown a couple of the pieces up on the screen as I'm kind of referencing them. You can tell like this is very much a similar vein. The game story is kind of similar as well, where it's like 2,000 years in the future after a dystopian event, effectively, and we live in a totally different world after effectively like a world's end kind of thing. And the story plot doesn't really get shown to us more than the manual or just conceptually through its visuals sort of in the game Panzer Dragoon until the third one, which is a role-playing game, Panzer Dragoon Saga, as it's known in North America. We didn't really get more of a storyline, but they're very arcadey style game rail shooters that have 3D polygonal graphics, and you just kind of go through a level, and then the game loop is kind of like, okay, well, you kill the enemies as you go through, much like you would a rail shooter, and at the end you fight a boss, and the bosses are kind of what the unique thing about the game is. In the first one, to me, that's kind of the better highlight of its gameplay is kind of how you fight the bosses. And in the second one, which we might look at in a different episode, but the second one, they took the same game loop and made it even better. And apparently they're working on a remake of that now as well, that they've released the remake of the original Panzer Dragoon, which I'm looking forward to. But the actual levels are more diverse and stuff like that. It's not that they're not very diverse in the very first game and have their own kind of cool different mechanics and things like that. But yeah, so you've never played this game before.
No, I'll be honest. I thought it was an RPG until like probably
Nope.
somewhere in the last 10 years did I find out this was actually a rail shooter.
Yeah, no. Saga, the third one, which is a very expensive Sega Saturn game and unfortunately not really accessible as easily, is the role-playing game that they kind of made after, because they wanted to do something new and unique. But no, this game is it was developed by, I believe, 15 people, around 15 people that worked on the project. This is their first Sega Saturn project. It was one of the launch titles for the game, or very early, like first year at least. I think it was launched in North America, but anyway, so you're going to play the remake version of it, which is available on kind of Switch, PlayStation 4, I think Xbox, the PC, like Steam and GOG. Yeah, we're going to be playing the remake version here. And then we'll get your thoughts and opinions on the game.
Okay, I'm excited.
All right, cool. So we're gonna start the game. We're playing it actually on a USB Saturn controller because I thought it was super appropriate. And the control scheme actually fits this correctly. I'm gonna get you to watch the trailer of it just to kind of get the aesthetic of it. It is a couple minutes long. This same trailer exists on the Saturn.
Bye, friends. I apparently have work to do.
Yeah.
Regardless of what we were doing previously.
Yeah, trying to live.
I have been chosen. Okay.
So if you hold the fire button and just now let go. There you go.
That's a much better way to play.
Yeah, it depends on what you're firing on. Some things take multiple hits, but a lot of the little tiny targets only take one hit, which that's better. And then hit the R1 or L1 button just to get used to that, and you can look around in different radiuses.
Oh, okay.
So then you can actually find things on your side in the radio menu on the top, actually. Yeah, it takes a little bit used to because it's a little bit disorienting, but that's the uniqueness of this thing, is the multi-targeting thing and how you could switch the axis. So it's like you're still on a rail, but you could control where you're firing a little bit more clearly, rather than in like Star Fox where you're just firing ahead of you and you're not looking behind you. And it uses that kind of features for the bosses and stuff like that. And sometimes there's things on the side that you can get that you only fire at if you're sort of looking at. But yeah. So one of the cool things about this version of the game is that the Saturn had its limitations, obviously, so there's a lot of like pop-in in the background and stuff like that, because it can only show so many polygons. But the transition between these different sections is a little smoother as well, because of the limitations of the hardware and stuff like that. So like it wasn't as obvious that you were kind of going into the next section after this, for example. And it's a lot smoother, which is kind of nice. Obviously the graphics look more modern too, but Yeah, like here you go into a black screen basically instead of a thing, and then it basically quickly loads this next part. This is your first boss.
The Imperial battleship.
Yeah. So you're gonna want to hit its target points with its weapons and stuff like that, and make sure that its missiles don't hit you. And so that's your first non-targetable object, basically, that you have to single fire.
Well, I didn't die.
That's true.
So that's
You
something.
did pretty good. And the other cool thing is the endless planes are kind of a reference to a feature that the Saturn could do that the other systems couldn't. One of its features of its like VDB chips was that it could make an endless plane that you could basically see off into the distance. It was like a flat surface. I think you could add textures on it as well.
Okay.
You'll notice it on some like backgrounds of the fighting games and stuff like that, that it just basically goes on forever in the Saturn games. And the water in this game just went on forever, which was kind of like a neat feature instead of it like just being a specific box.
I'm guessing we're not friends. Okay.
Nope. They're part of the Imperials.
Star Wars has taught me anything. Empire bad. So, odd question.
Yep.
How many stages is this?
I don't remember, but it might be 6. It's not super long. The difficulty ramps up every level, obviously, and then the later levels. There's one of my favorite levels is like this tunnel level, and it's much harder because you kind of have to know the pattern. But you probably had to play it a few times to get like good at it, and then from there you could beat it within like an hour or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an overly long game, like all way considering, but it does have that like arcadey style to it as well, which most of those types of games, in my opinion, just don't really.
Did this have an arcade release at all?
No, it didn't. It was only for the Saturn.
Really?
Yeah.
Because like you're right, this would have been an outstanding arcade title.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the people who worked on this game had experience with working with arcades, so that's why you're seeing some of the like arcade influence. But no, it was Saturn only release. There was a Xbox original Panzer Dragoon Orta.
Orta, yeah. I remember Orta.
Yeah, and it's the same type of game loop as Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2, with updated graphics. It looks like what would have been released on the Dreamcast, to be honest with you, if the Dreamcast actually did decide to produce games longer instead of just going to software like Sega made that decision. But yeah. And then since then, there really was nothing. And then there was this remake that the company did. Because this isn't by Sega, it's by a totally different company that kind of got like permission to work on it. Kind of like the Streets of Rage 4 and stuff like that. They're kind of outsourcing their games a little bit.
I mean, why not, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And
the neat thing about this is like the game got a lot of criticism. This re-release got quite a bit of criticism from what I saw because it didn't add in any modern features, and it's kind of like this is just a reskin of the original game. But they were pretty faithful, in my opinion, to the original game, which is kind of what I would rather have them done instead of just create something new. Like I would love for them to create something new, but like instead of taking the first one and just making it completely different, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, this is the level where you fight the airship. Oh yeah, this is the level where you fight the sandworms, but it's like totally different. So they definitely captured in my opinion, they captured the heart of the original. Ah, yes, I remember this boss. I love how they're all prototype as well. It's like we're not sending the normal stuff after you. This is awesome prototype stuff.
Awesome prototype stuff. Oh, jeez.
You're like, where is it?
Oh. Right there.
So this one you actually have to dodge them because some of them will be higher and some of them will be lower. Just being dramatic.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm like, you panned away, and that means the level's over. Don't send more things after me. Oh, those look exactly like the
pterodactyl riders.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's a lot better than I kind of expected after knowing what it was.
Yeah.
If that, I don't know. If that, not that that sounds like, not that I thought it was gonna suck, because I didn't. I thought it was gonna be interesting because obviously it's something that people are pretty passionate about and there's a lot of interest in it. But I was also like, it's a rail shooter, kind of like Star Fox. Am I going to really enjoy it?
Right.
Because it's not that I didn't enjoy Star Fox. It's just going back and playing Star Fox, like the original Star Fox specifically.
Okay.
It
runs at 12 frames.
Well, yes. Yes, it does. And it's a bunch of like triangles and rectangles shooting at each other.
Yeah.
And I think that going back, especially for like maybe somebody who's a little bit younger, who didn't have that kind of background that maybe you and I do with video games, it would be a little bit more challenging to find the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, that's... I know a lot of people that are like that. Yeah, they have a hard time with old polygonal graphics.
Yes. Yeah, like if you look at something like Virtual Fighter, like the first Virtual Fighter, where it is very, very polygonal.
And this is a remake, so it has a lot more skinning on the textures and stuff.
Oh yeah, this is very, very shiny.
And to be fair, the original Panzer Dragoon for its time, in comparison to what was out of it at the time, was very, very shiny. It was kind of like one of the... Like that and the Virtual Fighter game were kind of like two of the ones that I saw a lot of press about because they looked really good for the console. They were kind of like console sellers, so to speak.
Yeah.
For their launch games, anyway.
It's funny that you mentioned Zaxxon 3D because I remember playing Zaxxon for the Coleco.
Okay.
When I was much younger.
Yeah, because it's isometric. The Zaxxon 3D one, it's isometric where you move around on kind of a rectangular grid.
Yes.
And it's sort of like a rail shooter if you think about it.
It's
also like a shoot 'em up as well.
Yep.
But you can kind of see where it sort of forks into the two different genres, and then you start getting games like this and Star Fox and stuff like that.
Oh, very much craziness. Anyways, you also wanted me to try out the Saturn version.
Yeah, so let's plug in a Saturn and get you to play at least the first level, and just so you can see the differences. The first level is really an important level because I find they put a lot of emphasis on like the beauty of like the water and all of the like island and stuff like that. It looks really nice.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's plug in a Saturn.
I like that was essentially the same.
Yeah.
Even with the arrows, kind of the slow arrows.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like they kind of tried to keep it just respectful to the original sort of...
Yeah.
Just update its legacy rather than change it. But the music is the exact same. It's actually one of the highlights of, I think, this series is they've even made like recent pressings in vinyl and re-releases of the music and stuff like that. It's pretty popular music. Of all of the three games, they're pretty amazing. If you like sort of sci-fi, fantasy, video gamey type music.
I do like the changes that they did to the inside of this factory?
Yeah.
Ship? Something?
Yeah, I think you're inside some sort of factory. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
Like it's all abstract, but yeah.
you get a lot better idea that it's some kind of like facility
Mm-hmm.
because it has a lot of the like wiring and stuff.
Yeah, and like these are texture mappings on the Saturn can run this, right? So,
Yeah. Yo, yeah. I mean, it. This is what, 20 years old?
94-ish, so older than that.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, it looks a little bit different.
Yep.
But honestly, like, oh,
Oh, is it inverted controls?
It
I
is.
forget. Okay, yeah. You can switch the original to be inverted controls as well. I don't know if that's an option you can switch. All the old rail shooters were inverted controls.
it's gonna be.
Take you a hot minute to get used to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably more than just a minute.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like I don't know, most like flight things, I'm usually comfortable with inverted controls.
Mm-hmm.
But it might just be because the non-inverted version was what I had just played.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
Oh. I definitely see what you mean about the water.
Yeah. Yeah, because on the PlayStation, it would have cut off eventually. And it wasn't really until later in the 16-bit era life cycle where they tried to, like, Crash Bandicoot did a really good job of trying to hide the background with its foreground and how they angled the camera. And in this game, you can see a lot of the pop-in because they can only show so many polygons, right? So
Yeah.
you can see it in like Daytona as well, where like the track just keeps on loading. Like this area, it does a little bit better of a job because there's these walls, but like this is very early people learning how to figure out, like, because a wall's about to pop in behind you, like in front of you.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
How did I not notice that giant city in the distance?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
See, and that's a load time between different parts of the level. It's pretty quick. Like,
Yeah, it was not
but-
bad at all. This, Oh. Haha. Another load time. And that's the battleship, I'm guessing?
Yeah, this is the end boss. So yeah, they extended that one section just a little tiny bit, but the boss is still the same, and the monsters are still pretty similar. Gameplay loop is still there. And see, because like, there's a lot of open plains, but in the later levels, there's like a forest level, for example, and this is really expressed in the second one, where they actually have a ton of things in like the background and the foreground and stuff like that. So they did get better at doing these types of things.
Oh, I am for sure gonna die.
Yeah, the orange thing is following you. It's one of those missiles. Oh, never mind. It's just a ship. Sorry. I know they're different colors, so. And the Saturn can do transparencies, but you'll notice the radial is actually like a mesh. That's because it's using, I think, VDV2 instead of VDV1, which are its two processors. VDV1 can do transparencies, but VDV2 can't. And you have to basically balance the load between the two of them, which is another limitation of the Saturn. So that's why some of the stuff isn't transparent. But there is a lot of examples, like Burning Rangers, for example. There's a lot of transparencies in that game. But they have to choose like what to run it on, basically, and it's different layers.
I should not have finished that.
No, you were really low on health. Yeah, I don't know the analog difficulties between the two of them. Obviously, the original one's probably a little bit harder for its normal to normal, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what hurt me most was the swap.
Oh, yeah, the
From
inverted controls.
inverted to- or
we'd have to
non-inverted
load
to
it up
inverted.
into the core, because you can only get to options on the main menu.
Yeah.
To see whether or not you can do non-inverted controls. I don't remember. I actually had the exact opposite problem with you, because I'm so used to playing it in inverted controls that whenever I booted the remake, it was not inverted controls. I'm like, oh, can I change this, please? Because I play Star Fox on inverted controls as well. All right, so there you have it. Panzer Dragoon.
Panzer Dragoon.
How did you enjoy it?
So
Or not enjoy it?
I did like it. I think. Well, I told you that recently I picked it up for the Switch because it was on sale. I think that was actually the same reason you ended up picking it up on GOG, because it was on sale. So that's awesome. It's something you guys can keep in mind, that it is new, available. It goes on sale. I don't want to say frequently, but
Yeah, it will again, probably during Christmas or whatever.
yeah. So it's something that you can pick up relatively easily and relatively inexpensively.
Yeah, it's on Steam, GOG, the PlayStation consoles, and I think Switch, and I believe the Xbox console as well. So it's on all major platforms.
Yeah,
minimum.
it's easily accessible. So I mean, that is always a huge win for me. And I think going back and playing the original Saturn version, it was still good. I think if I started playing with inverted controls in the updated version, going into the Saturn version would have been a little bit easier of a transition for me. But we didn't realize that was going to be the case. So
yeah, I forgot.
Diving in, it was a bit of a challenge, and just playing overall was a bit of a challenge, because my brain was like, oh,
It works this way.
up is up.
Because it feels like you're playing the same game. It just looks different. And it's just like, wait, it's not working the way I'm expecting it to.
I was really surprised at how smooth it was, how they handled the transitions, especially for the time, because obviously they don't have an infinite draw distance.
Yeah.
Or as much of a draw distance as they do nowadays.
Yeah, and polygon count is much lower as well.
Oh, yeah. But it still looked good. You know, it still looked really good. I was surprised at just how good it looked and how well it still played.
Yeah, compared to games of the time, I think it's kind of held up, in my opinion, quite well for the Saturn version, and its gameplay still kind of stands true, which warranted the remake. And
yeah,
I think like it's still a fun game loop. It's not like a overly long experience or anything like that. Like, you're not going to get 80 hours of like game time out of it unless you replay it and replay it and replay it. But
no, but if you go back and play Star Fox, you're not going to get 80 hours of gameplay out of Star Fox.
Exactly. It's a rail shooter, so you need to know what you're getting into going in.
And I'll be completely honest, the amount of like love that people have for Star Fox, this should be talked about as much, if not more than that.
That's always been my gripe with the game Panzer Dragoon, is people don't tend to remember this game as fondly, and it's due to the player base. People just decided not to get a Saturn.
Yeah.
And if they played the Saturn, they might remember the game, or it just didn't have the impact of really. Star Fox took off at 64, and I believe that's because it was basically a better made version of Star Fox 2, which I think everybody would have loved at the time.
Yep.
And it had a multiplayer function, which was really big at the time, with the system having 4 controllers and everything. So
yeah, because I mean, I felt like if this had a multiplayer mode, that would be fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe 2 people at the same time and then just double the enemies or something like traditional, like that might have worked. I'm not sure what they would do, because the combat mode might not really work very well.
No, a head-to-head would be...
Yeah.
Head-to-head would not work because of
I just don't think it would be as fun. It would probably work. I just don't think it would be entertaining.
Yeah, but I do think like a cooperative 2-player experience would be, fun. As long as I think you'd have to do like split screen, kind of like horizontally as opposed to vertically.
Maybe, yeah.
Because I feel like if it was vertical, you wouldn't have as much of the screen. It would be a little bit...
Yeah.
A little bit compacted. But
Mhm.
yeah, this was good. Do I think you should go out and hunt down the Saturn version to play?
If you have a Saturn, I think it's a game you should buy.
Yeah, or if you're a collector and you're into that kind of thing,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But for me, I
mean,
do have a
you got
Saturn.
it on the Switch, right? So,
I got it on the Switch. I'm
Yeah.
likely gonna, go home and play it over the course of the next week because
see what the other levels are like.
yeah, why
Yeah.
not? And just get the rest of the little bit of story.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued by the company said that they would like to do the second one, and it sounds like they might be working on it. There hasn't been very many updates, so if they do eventually release that in the next year or two or something, that I'm on board. I'm gonna definitely get it because the second one is a really fun experience as well.
Yeah.
Many fans of the series for the rail shooter game, they really like the second one. Probably a little bit better, just because it is. I think we were talking about this before the episode. The first one was like 15 people working on it. The second one was they took the same game and then they basically made it better.
Yeah.
And then the third one's an RPG. And then Orta is what we might have gotten on the Dreamcast, but ended up being on the Xbox instead. So yeah. Most people that I know who have played the Saturn have played this and then they really like it. Most people who play rail shooters I know who didn't have a Saturn or don't really know much about it, just they've skipped over it, which I find super unfortunate because it has some interesting features for the time, which have been kind of implemented in other games.
Yeah.
Because I believe the lock-on feature is now a Star Fox feature.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that was in Command anyway. So I could be. It's been a really long time since I played Command, but I know that like there was Starlink as well. I'm pretty sure one of the ships does that, and it's just a genre that isn't. It didn't really get many games made at the time, and there's not very many of them, and they are enjoyable to play from time to time. So
Well, and you're a little bit restricted in space with a physical ship,
yeah,
whereas you're kind of always going to be shooting forwards.
yeah,
Or dropping things beneath you.
yeah,
Whereas this, the whole like 360 view it's a real trip.
yeah.
You
'cause
really have to
you're-
pay attention to the radar up at the top and where enemies are coming
You're
from.
always flying forward, but your rider is basically what's changing his angle.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, because of the way that the Dragon Rider like aesthetically looks and works, it kind of makes sense that that's the way that you could go
Yeah.
about it, because it's not like you're flying a fighter jet where your missiles and your weapons are going forward and you've got like flash to fire behind you or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
but it's like Squadrons where it's not on a rail, but it's kind of you're in a ship flying around, and you can still look around you, especially like in VR. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But you're still limited to forward arc firing effectively for most of the.
Yeah, you can't
different
just like
ships.
pull out a blaster and
Yeah.
start shooting off to the side.
Yeah, which it doesn't really make sense for an X-wing or something, but
That's true, you get sucked
that's what
into
makes this
vacuum
game
space.
unique, right? So it's kind of, and then you saw the bosses and like the worm monsters, they worked around that so to make the sort of dynamic portions of the level a little bit different because they play around with that mechanic quite a
Yeah.
bit. So yeah, like the boss that was jumping over you and stuff
Yep,
like
the
that
big
and whatnot.
sandworms.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. So anyway, so I guess that's a thumbs up, or
Yeah, I would definitely say go out, check out the remake. It's easy to find. It's available on everything, so you got no excuse if you enjoy rail shooters. Even if you have maybe never tried a rail shooter, I think that
honestly,
shot.
yeah, for rail shooters, like if you want to try one out, this is one of the ones that, especially the remake, that stands out as one that's kind of like a pinnacle piece of the genre. So
Yeah.
it'd be one worth checking out. Yeah. All right, that's all we have for this week. We'll check you out in the next episode.